Joining me now to discuss the ruling on the president's extreme vetting order, President Trump's rally tonight in Nashville, and selling Ryan Care, chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp, and veteran of 10 presidential campaigns, leading Republican strategist, Ed Rollins. Great to have you.
Nice to be with you.
To have you both with us. Let me start with, I want to put this up. This just happening in Hawaii, as we said at the outset of the show. A federal judge in Hawaii has just stayed the president's travel ban or extreme vetting order, and this is what he said in part. This from the Obama-appointed Hawaiian judge, Judge Derek Watson. Because a reasonable, objective observer, enlightened by the specific historical context, contemporaneous public statements, and specific sequence of events leading to its issuance, would conclude that the executive order was issued with a purpose to disfavor a particular religion in spite of its stated religiously neutral purpose. End of statement. One of the longest run-on sentences you will encounter even in law, Matt Schlapp, but a reasonable and objective observer in the mind of this judge, God bless him, holds greater weight than the law and the Constitution and the facts before him. Extraordinary writing, I think, in supporting this order against the president's extreme vetting order.
But not surprising. So this is what these left-wing judges do, is they don't necessarily just look at the Constitution and the clear interpretation of the words therein, and then look at this executive order, which had expert legal research done to create it. He doesn't look at those words. What he's saying is he looked at Trump's remarks at some rallies and equated them with the Constitution and what's in this executive order. That is absurd, and it's one of the reasons why the American people are crying out for some sanity from their government.
Yeah, Hawaii at this point, you know, after you read this, it looks as though it's created a judiciary from an altered state, not another state in the union. This judge is quite a piece of business.
Well, we have over 100, too many, I think it's over 370 federal judges in 94 districts, any one of whom can do what he can do, and unfortunately they're in that ninth court.
You mean decide who is and who is not a reasonable, objective observer? I love that.
And then unfortunately you go to the Ninth Court of Appeals, which is the most left-wing court in the country.
I think we ought to just shorten that to the most whacked-out left-wing judicial entity.
Matt and I both served in the White House and both tried to undo that by putting a few conservatives to balance on it, but we didn't succeed. My sense is this. I think they did the best job they could in fixing it from the original challenge. I think it'll win out, but the problem is you've got another period of time here that goes by, and it just clouds up the concept, and ultimately the vetting and the legislation is what's going to be critical, and that needs to get moving too.
Yeah, and so we're back where we were, or where we've been since the first day on February 3rd against the original order of President Trump. It was this revised order was to go into effect tomorrow. It has now been stayed by a clearly impartial and highly objective and utterly reasonable fellow, Derek Watson, out in Hawaii, who thinks he can decide just exactly who has their heads on straight and who doesn't. I mean, let's turn to another issue, and that is, speaking of heads on straight, the House leadership, the way in which Ryan Care has been rolled out. Matt, we now have the Budget Committee tomorrow. They're within just the thinnest of votes, about 4 votes, in which Ryan Care could go down if the Freedom Caucus and others do not support the legislation.
You know, Lou, we watched John Boehner try to operate as speaker, and we learned, I thought, something, which is just taking a piece of legislation that's cooked up in the speaker's office and jamming it through will not work. And what it does is it creates more animosity amongst Republicans. And this was rolled out in a way where most people didn't even have a heads up as to what it even contained, including members of Congress, but certainly other conservative journalists, et cetera. And it's a big problem. And you will not pass a Obamacare replacement without conservatives feeling like they have a fair shot at their amendments. And that's what Jim DeMint talked about earlier on your show, and that is what they have to do in order to heal this Republican rift.
And then heal it, fix the bill, come to terms with whatever reality is. It seems like the leadership in the House, and I've got to say, I understand there are lots of extenuating circumstances like arcane parliamentary procedures and paths down which all of this legislation must pass. But for crying out loud, they have had all these years, and really make it very clear they know very little about what is necessary. They had plenty of time to adjust to President Trump's demands that it create lower premiums, that it cover more people, that it create better health care in this country. Where do we head from here, in all likelihood, in your judgment, Ed?
If you don't open this process up to where members of Congress, Republicans or Democrats, have the opportunity to amend it and to correct it, you're going to end up with a bad bill again, and you may fail and fail miserably. We're going to know that very quickly. We're doing what we condemned the Democrats for doing 7 years ago, and my sense is we need to fix this thing. There's a lot of smart people in Congress that ought to basically working on this bill, and at the end of the day, they ought to find something. They get 218 votes in the House and more votes in the Senate, 51
Matt,
plus, and that they need to let this thing be worked.
Let it be worked. These are people choosing not to work, and that's really one of the issues I want to address here. I want both of you to address it. This president is working 24/7, 7 days a week, week in and week out. He set a new standard in work ethics. Meanwhile, the House and the Senate, you would think you were watching a country club at which someone has a booking for every 3 days. They show up, pitch somebody the keys to the car, and then show up again 2 days later. This isn't a job for them. This is just it's a venue. And something of what would you call it, a sinecure from the taxpayers. These people are not working hard, at least most of them. And certainly the leadership isn't trying to move with efficiency, productivity. There's no metric here for success other than whether they're reelected again, whether it's 2 years or 6 years. What are they? When will the Capitol Hill wake up?
Lou, that's the most important part of this, besides getting the policy right, which is the other side of this, and Ed knows this well as well, which is if they don't pass an acceptable Obamacare replacement, it's going to be off with their heads. This is the thing that Republicans across this country have been crying about doing for 7 years. It is a shame to squander this opportunity that Dr. Burgess talked about all over this squabble. You heard Dave Pratt on your show.
It's worse than that, I think, Matt, if I may say. It's betrayal of a president elected to change the status quo and to root out the establishment, the orthodoxy, and the ossified way of doing things in the nation's capital. You get the last word.
They should have repealed it on day one. They repealed it in the past, and then take the year or whatever to find a replacement. But until they repeal it, there's no great pressure on it.